If Chucky came running up on you, you'd probably be able to punt him across the street like nothing. He depends on sneak attacks because he's little and weak. He's got no shot one-on-one. Michael Myers and Jason Voorhees, you're not gonna win that fight. Hiding is your best bet, and even then, it's a long shot. Ghostface is just a normal person in a costume. Leatherface is a strong moron who you could hopefully outsmart. Do you see what I'm getting at here? Many of the icons of horror have a weakness, and if they don't have a weakness, they probably have something that you can exploit in your attempt to stay alive. Whether it's just hiding from them or getting in a car and driving away, there's usually something. But there's one icon I haven't mentioned, and I haven't mentioned them because there is no escape. There is nothing you can do to avoid the long, razor-sharp grasp of Freddy Krueger. We're not talking about a normal man. This isn't a lumbering oaf of a killer who you can outsmart or outmaneuver, because Freddy comes for you in your dreams. Try as we might to keep our eyes open, our bodies require rest. Go ahead, slam a pot of coffee, pop an energy drink or pill of some kind. It's only going to take you so far. Sleep is inevitable, meaning Freddy Krueger is inescapable. Across this series of videos, we're not going to focus solely on the Springwood slasher himself, though. We'll dive into the character, of course, chronicling his evolution from his 1984 debut up to his most recent starring appearance in the 2010 remake, but I'll be digging into the films themselves even further. Who wrote them? Who directed them? When exactly did they fall off, both at the box office and in quality? What sort of difficulties arose during production? Just how close did A Nightmare on Elm Street come to not even existing in the first place? And much, much more. If you've seen some of my other series, whether it's the history of Halloween or the history of Friday the 13th, which are 5.5 hours long and 4.5 hours long, respectively, you know what you're getting yourself into here. Today we're focusing specifically on the first movie, but just know right now, because in the past there have been some viewers who were very unhappy about the way that I talked about some of the Halloween movies or some of the Friday the 13th movies. Some of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies suck too. It is what it is, it's okay. Some of them are garbage. Critique is not only normal, it's not only human nature, it's not even bad. I've used this line before, but my videos are not commercials. I don't own Freddy Krueger, and I'm not trying to sell him to you. When these movies are great, and trust me, some of them are great, I'm gonna put them over to the moon. And when these movies are bad, and trust me, some of these movies are bad, I'm gonna bury them, and that's okay. Being a fan means taking the good with the bad and being able to recognize which is which. Both are perfectly fine, and we're all gonna be okay, I promise. Whether we're jumping up and down over the franchise's highlights or facepalming over its lowlights, we're doing the same thing either way. We're celebrating a series we love, spending hours at a time combing over its finest details. So without further ado, I say thank you for being here today for the history of A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 1. After the break, we'll get down to business. Every video here on 616 Entertainment is made possible by my supporters over on Patreon. If you enjoyed the show here today, consider signing up. You'll get early access, exclusive videos and podcasts, and more. Pro Wrestling Tees has the merch. As always, thank you for watching. Freddy Krueger and his film franchise, A Nightmare on Elm Street, were created after a child spotted a strange, menacing man staring into his bedroom window, a malevolent expression plastered across his face. This child's name was Wesley Earl Craven. Yeah, the iconic horror director. And this is only one piece of the puzzle, too. The series' legendary villain, Freddy Krueger, his appearance would be heavily based on what this strange window-peering man was wearing, that being a long coat and a felt hat. The long coat would take a while to come into play, but it would come into play nonetheless. The concept of dying in your dreams at the hand of something unknown, that was a separate story. Also a true story, though. Decades after the Weird Guy incident, Craven read a handful of articles surrounding a group of refugees who, after fleeing the genocidal conditions of their home countries, reached the United States and refused to sleep. Why? Nobody really knows. One could assume they were suffering from horrible nightmares. I mean, look at the situation they just escaped from. But the specifics of the situation were scant. Eventually, these men did sleep, and in no time flat, they died. What killed them? Nobody really knows. To this day, nobody knows. And yes, I am serious. This is a true story. Craven grew obsessed with these stories. How did these men die? What was it about falling asleep that killed them? What was it about the very idea of falling asleep that shook them to their core in the first place? Wes Craven, the sick and twisted creative that he was, couldn't help but run these ideas through his head, cooking up a potential answer to the question. What exactly were all of these people running from? And this is where we'll transition into the story of the film, A Nightmare on Elm Street. This is where we'll get into the meat of the matter, because that's what you want to do, right? Yeah, let's run through the story, and then we'll circle back to behind-the-scenes notes and production notes, where Freddy came from, and all that sort of stuff. How's that sound? Trapped inside some sort of factory, Tina desperately searches for a way out. This place is dark, it's wet, and somewhere in the shadows, a predator lurks. Luckily for Tina, it was all a dream, though the damage is done. In time, all of Tina's friends realize that they are dreaming about the exact same person. A scarred, disfigured man with knives on his fingers. While Nancy sleeps, the walls contort over her bed, the man seemingly trying to bleed into our real world. This man is Fred Krueger, or he was Fred Krueger. Years ago, Krueger was charged with the murders of 20 children. He was caught and convicted, but was freed when it came out that the initial search warrant on his property was mishandled. The neighborhood parents, unable to accept the fact that the man who took their babies away was getting off scot-free, they took matters into their own hands, burning Krueger alive inside the very building where he'd claimed the lives of his victims. Yes, I'm telling the story out of order, and I'm doing it for two reasons. Number one, you've already seen the movie. You don't need me to reveal to you what it is that Freddy Krueger did. You already know what Freddy Krueger did. And number two, doing it this way means it's not going to take 20 minutes to get through the plot. And that sounds good to me. How about it? Tina's nightmares continue, this time under much more direct, aggressive, and bizarre circumstances. Her stalker isn't hiding in the depths of a factory anymore. He's wide out in the open.
Please, God.
This is God.
These dreams seem to be crafted, at least in part, by Freddy Krueger. He slices his own fingers off simply to disgust Tina, which he seems to find very amusing. This is torture. This is Freddy's brand of torture. At any moment he could strike, but where's the fun in that? In the real world, Tina's body convulses, an unseen force controlling her every move, and before long, she's dead. Tina's friends do their best to explain to the police what the hell happened, but how do you make sense of this? Obviously, the cops assume Rod did it, so he's on the run, which doesn't last long. An exhausted Nancy is visited in school by Tina in one of the most chilling sequences in horror history. Following the trail of blood, Nancy is led deeper and deeper into the very factory Tina was dreaming in the beginning. Great. And he's here, by the way. Freddy's here. And this goes on, really, for the rest of the movie. Freddy continues to wreak havoc on Nancy and her friends when they least expect it. Gotta be safe in the bathtub, right? Not even close. Nancy's boyfriend Glenn agrees to watch her while she sleeps. Why? Because she's gonna go into the dream and search for Freddy. The balls on this girl, man. Holy shit. And as you might imagine, this turns out to be a huge mistake. Outdoor stairs offer looks through indoor windows directly over Rod's jail cell. Freddy walks right through the bars, and Tina's animated corpse, ravaged by reptiles and insects, calls from beyond. Freddy knows Nancy is in his house, and he's putting on a show. The stairs turn to mush. If it weren't for the alarm clock, Nancy would be gone. Glenn fucked up. He fell asleep. I mean, we should have known he was asleep right here.
Glenn?
Yeah, so?
Unhappy that he didn't get Nancy, Freddy sets his sights on Rod. Another one down. When these nightmares won't let up, Nancy's mom admits that she was one of the parents who killed Freddy years ago. Her alcoholism isn't just a quirky personality trait. She's struggling to cope with what she's done. How's Glenn doing with all this? Well, he's staying awake, right? Nope. Out cold across the street with headphones plugged into his stereo and a television resting on his dick and balls. Who sleeps like this? This is ridiculous. Look at this situation. And he'll never be able to explain this situation because... That's one of the best of all time, man. Come on. Distraught, Nancy concocts a plan. She's gonna pull Freddy into the real world where her dad can arrest him once and for all. And she's not joking. Monster or not, she knows she can't take a grown man in a one-on-one fight. She's a high school girl, so she rigs the whole house with traps. It's hard to tell when exactly some of these dreams start, but when the stairs in Nancy's house lead directly into the factory we visited multiple times now, the situation becomes quite clear. In this factory, which appears to be Freddy's lair, this seems to be where he lives in whatever realm this is, Nancy finds trophies of Freddy's conquests, pieces of her friends' lives, stolen by the Springwood Slasher. Speak of the devil! When Nancy dives over the balcony and lands in her front yard, God, is this beautiful. Dreams are weird like this, aren't they? And it works. Nancy has pulled Freddy out of the dream and into our real world. There's only one problem. They are locked in the house together and her dad is not here yet. Within seconds, though, Freddy is embarrassed, totally thrown off by Nancy's traps. This isn't his house anymore. He's not in control anymore, this motherfucker. Now who's helpless? As if he hasn't burned enough. Jesus Christ. Nancy's dad finally arrives, but he's too late. Freddy kills Nancy's mom, claiming one last life before retreating back to the realm from which he came. I have no explanation for this visual, by the way. I find this quite bizarre, to be honest with you. And that's where we leave things, right? No. He's still here. But now, Nancy gets it. Freddy feeds on fear. None of this is real. They're still in the dream, and Nancy is demanding the lives of her friends and family be restored. And in the blink of an eye, they are. She cracked the code. Or did she?
I'm not doing it! What's going on with the window?
Okay, so multiple things. Yes, the mom getting pulled through the window is laughably terrible. My friends and I always thought this looked like shit. Even when we were kids, even when we found the rest of the movie scary, we thought this one specific part was just awful. And how this was able to make it into the final cut, I will never know. But that aside, many questions remain. The movie purposely plays with us. Sometimes we can't really tell we're in a dream until they beat us over the head with something ridiculous, like Tina walking around in a body bag. Other times it's more subtle, like Freddy coming through the wall. This isn't real life, right? Because whose perspective would this be from? I don't know, it's hard to say. But at the end, the traps, Nancy's dad coming to help, Nancy's mom getting killed and returning, and the car. What the hell is going on here? Which part is a dream and which parts are real? When did the dream start? Is it all a dream? Is Nancy still in the dream? Did she die in there? We don't know. And for a while, that's where this story ended. And it wasn't supposed to end like this. This is actually something that director Wes Craven and producer Robert Shea argued over like cats and dogs, and I mean, let's just talk about it. The endings. There were like 5 endings shot for this movie. Nancy taking her fear back from Freddy and rendering him powerless was the original closer. That was it. Everything after was tacked on, and I mean, that's why it all feels extremely confusing and disjointed. In one of the endings, the kids drive away just fine with the mom getting pulled through the window. In another, the kids drive away just fine. Mom is fine, but the jump roping little girls are present, still indicative that something is wrong. In one of the endings, Freddy is driving the car and it's just awkward because there's no shot of the kids reacting to him. Another area of argument, surprisingly, was the goopy stairs, which I find very funny. Wes Craven did not like this spot at all. It was Robert Shea's idea, and this came from a nightmare that he had in real life. Wes was like, it's stupid, we don't need that. And Shea was like, it's a good goddamn idea. And at the end of the day, Wes Craven was like, I mean, you did fund the majority of this film with your own money, so fuck it, we'll do it. But you have to direct it. And that's a true story on all fronts. Robert Shea is in the running for MVP of this picture. No, he didn't write it, he didn't direct it, but he was largely responsible for getting the cash together to get this thing done. Wes Craven shopped this script around for 3 years. Companies like Disney and Paramount read the script and were like, yeah, dude, I don't think so. And Robert Shea's New Line Cinema were the company to finally say, you know what? Let's give it a whirl. Why not? And this all came at a time that Wes Craven had described himself as penniless, and his career on the back of Deadly Blessing and Swamp Thing was not exactly on the upswing. And Craven being broke at the time, he wasn't the only one. Robert Shea has told the story of taking a speaking gig at a college with the topic being how to fund your indie film. He was up there speaking with authority on this subject to these would-be filmmakers, while in the back of his head he knew he couldn't even secure funding for his own picture. New Line Cinema was not a gigantic distribution company. They were pretty indie at this juncture, and they were putting everything they had into getting Nightmare done. If this thing had bombed at the box office, New Line could have easily gone up in smoke. Up in smoke. That's what happened to Freddy, right? When the parents, when they burned him. Look, I'm just trying to transition into talking about Freddy as a character. Okay, can we just do that? Did you ever notice Freddy doesn't have stripes on the sleeves of his sweater in this first movie? This is the only time that's true. In all of the other movies, it's fully striped. But here, no sir. This shirt is often referred to as a Christmas sweater, but that was not the intention. As a matter of fact, Freddy's original design was red and yellow, not red and green. Maybe Robert Englund was like, red and yellow doesn't work for me, brother. No, what really happened was writer-director Wes Craven came across a study about how the human eye interprets color, and that red and green are polar opposites, the two harshest colors the human eye can perceive at the same time. Craven liked the idea of Freddy's very shirt being hard to look at, so fuck it. Make it red and green. And the razor glove, that was not the original concept either. For quite a while, Freddy was imagined to be carrying around a sickle. But again, Wes Craven got to thinking. He was looking for something that would tap into the most primal of human fears. At the dawn of recorded human history, what were we doing? We were trying to not get torn to pieces by goddamn saber-toothed tigers and bears and dinosaurs and shit. Freddy's knife fingers, or whatever the hell you want to call them, that's what they are. They're like the elongated claws of a deadly predator. I love that the opening credits show Freddy creating the glove in his abandoned, rundown building. He takes a sick pleasure in every facet of its development, too, like the sicko he is. There's been a lot of conversation over the years over what type of sicko Freddy Krueger is. Exactly. I mean, he's always a serial killer, that never really changes. But there's been talk that he doesn't just kill his victims, but he uses and rapes them as well. Now, it's kind of ridiculous that I can't even say those words on YouTube because, I mean, these are real things that happen in real life. They're terrible, but the rules are the rules and I have to play by them. Let's just say Freddy Krueger would probably be on the client list, right? You know what I'm talking about. And here's the thing. Those who are under the impression that he's a diddler, there are times where you are not wrong. In later sequels, it is alluded to that he engages in those activities with his victims. It's worth noting as well, initially, in the writing stages of the first film, Freddy was going to be that kind of guy. But then there were a whole bunch of real-life situations where this sort of thing was running rampant, and Wes Craven eventually went, yeah, you know what, I don't think we need this. And he cut it from the character and the film. Look, I feel like fiction is fiction. When crafting a villain, when creating a bad guy, applying terrible, awful, horrible behaviors to them strengthens them as a bad guy. On the other side of the coin, I'm never going to look at a piece of fiction and say, you know what, I wish that guy was a so I don't have much of an argument here. I mean, to be fully honest, I wish they never took the toothpaste out of the tube on this thing because now it's all anybody ever thinks about with Freddy Krueger. I mean, look, I have several Freddy Krueger t-shirts. I have one of them right here. This shirt is awesome. And when I bought this shirt, my girlfriend was like, oh, you got a shirt. And she's kind of not wrong. And I just have to be like, look, I don't like that part of it, okay? Robert Englund even landed the role of Fred Krueger because he didn't come to his audition trying to look big and strong and intimidating. He'd gotten the inside track that Freddy was supposed to be this specific sort of creep, so he used cigarette ash to darken under his eyes, and he wiped oil off the dipstick of his car and used it to slick and dirty his hair, and he purposely played the audition super slimy, like, you know, like that specific sort of abuser tends to be. And he nailed it. This totally pulled Wes Craven away from his original concept of having a big, jacked up stuntman villain like Michael Myers or Jason Voorhees. He went instead for a talking, active bad guy played by a respected and talented actor. And I think that really sets Freddy apart from the other icons of the genre. Freddy's look, that is, the look of his face, was designed by David Miller. The burns and scarring on Freddy was modeled after very real burn victims, but the part where Freddy slashes himself and green mucus and maggots pour out of his body, that was all just David Miller's doing. There was a plan at one point for Freddy to be even more fucked up, with areas of his skull exposed, his lips burnt away to the point that his teeth would be visible, but they did not wind up going that route. I didn't know this before getting deep into my research for this series, but David Miller's body of work also includes The Terminator, Batman and Robin, and goddamn Thriller. Holy shit. The arm stretching across the entire alley is a very disturbing visual, and this was achieved by having two dudes stand on either side of the street with fishing poles. Fantastic. The famous scene where Rod is hanged in the jail cell. The bedsheet was already wrapped around his neck and they just gently uncurled it. And playing the footage in reverse makes it look like it's tightening up rather than coming loose and coming off. That's old school movie magic, man. And there are very few things that give me the level of satisfaction that old school movie magic does. And I know a lot of you Nightmare hardcores know this stuff already. Of course you do. But not everybody watching this is an established hardcore fan. We gotta share our knowledge, you know? That's a good thing. There's a rumor that it wasn't always Robert Englund in the hat and glove either, that an actor by the name of David Warner was cast first. And maybe you've seen some of Warner's stuff, The Omen, Turtles 2, Time Bandits, Titanic. He would even go on to work with Wes Craven later in Scream 2. But the rumor is that he had to drop out of the Freddy Krueger role due to timing and scheduling conflicts. Here's Warner as Freddy Krueger in a makeup test before he wound up bowing out. Right? No, actually. Despite the aforementioned David Miller, our FX guy on this picture, stating that Warner was the original guy, this is not true. You'd think if he, of all people, said it, then it must be true, but something does not quite add up. David Warner himself has stated that he is completely unaware of the idea that he was once eyed for Freddy, let alone cast in the role. New Line's Robert Shea has denied this claim, and even Wes Craven, who loved Warner and eventually did work with him, has stated that no, David Warner was never in line for Freddy Krueger in any way. So there you go. There is a long-standing rumor that we can put to rest. On the casting front, though, we should hit a few of the names, don't you think? We've already been talking about Robert Englund as Freddy Krueger. He's the one character and actor we'll be talking about in literally every movie across this series. Yes, even the reboot, because we'll have to do some comparison. But we're not even close to being ready for that yet. Relax. Who will be back later? How about Nancy Thompson, our main character here in the original film? Heather Langenkamp, up to this point in 1984, had an acting resume that really did not have that much on it. Like, almost nothing. So Nightmare was really her coming out party. On the opposite end of that spectrum would be John Saxon, who plays Lieutenant Donald Thompson, Nancy's dad. John Saxon was well known, well respected. We're talking about Bruce Lee's co-star in Enter the Dragon. This man told Bruce Lee, nah, I got him. And he whooped Bolo's ass one-on-one, okay? Saxon had worked previously under Dario Argento, Roger Corman, David Cronenberg, and more. This was a legend. Not yet a legend was Johnny Depp, making his acting debut here in this picture as Glenn, Nancy's boyfriend. Many know him for his portrayal of Jack Sparrow in the Pirates of the Caribbean films, which are great for sure, but I would point you to Sweeney Todd, Ed Wood, Secret Window, Donnie Brasco, Fear and Loathing, and many more. He's one of my favorite actors, what can I say? Secret Window specifically is super underrated. Check it out next time you got a minute. The role of Glenn was nearly filled by Charlie Sheen at one point, but obviously this never came together. Who went with Johnny Depp to his Nightmare audition? None other than Jackie Earle Haley, who would go on to play Freddy himself in the 2010 reboot. Another long-standing rumor is that Jackie Earle Haley was actually auditioning for the Glenn role himself, and that Johnny Depp was just tagging along with Jackie and he wound up landing the role. This has been debunked by Jackie Earle Haley himself, so that's another one we can put to rest. Probably the two most famous kills here in the original film are Tina and Glenn, both of which used the same set to create their dramatic visuals. How the hell was Tina moving up the walls and laying on the ceiling? How the hell did they get the blood to shoot so forcefully upward? Well, they didn't. Tina isn't on the ceiling, she's on the floor, because this set was lifted off the ground and spun 360 degrees. This blood isn't shooting upward, it's pouring downward, as the set is upside down. See the sheets dangling sideways and the blood running strangely across the wall? Yeah, all of that blood had collected in one spot and broke the rig. The set was leaning so heavily in one direction that all of the blood started pouring all over the floor. Being a relatively low-budget film, a budget that was struggling to be met as financiers were constantly pulling out, this huge mess was a huge problem. How do you clean all this up? They had the teenage son of one of the crew members stay overnight in the studio and literally mop it up himself for a few bucks. Amazing. What I also find amazing is the shot where Freddy's coming through the wall. It feels like he's trying to slip into our world, undetected, held in place just barely by the bounds of reality. Now, it's widely known that this effect cost about $3 to pull off, as that's literally just a stuntman in costume pushing into a carefully lit, stretched out piece of spandex. The reason this shot is amazing isn't just because it's simple and cheap, but because of how it feels. I don't know about you guys, but I dream very vividly almost every night, and I wake up most mornings remembering huge pieces of those dreams. The thing about this shot is that I have felt this before. I have woken up and was 100% sure that there was a guy standing there and that I was looking right at him. It happens pretty often, and I'm not talking about when I was a kid. This still happens to me today, and it's very uncomfortable. Now, I'm not claiming to be haunted. I'm not saying that there's an actual person in my room. The more logical explanation is that I'm not fully awake when this occurs, and that my imagination and my eyes are playing tricks on me. I understand that. But in those moments where I'm looking at someone in front of me, someone I don't know, someone who doesn't belong here, while I am extremely vulnerable, yeah, that's a pretty frightening position to be in. And that's what this shot is to me. It's the feeling of someone being where they don't belong. I would call this the scariest part of the movie, maybe of the entire series, and there's not a drop of blood to be found or a decibel of a scream to be heard. Have you ever seen the infamous old internet post, "Have you ever dreamed this man?" This all turned out to be a hoax, of course. But this very concept is eerie. I remember seeing this when I was a stupid little teenager, and I was like, I don't like this. Don't show me this. I don't like this. It felt like Freddy attempting to enter our world. It felt like the man in my room. I don't like it. When I was a kid, my fears were strange. They were not the same as everybody else's, I guess. I wasn't then, nor am I now, afraid of heights or snakes or spiders or anything like that. And even the icons like Michael Myers, Jason Voorhees, and Chucky, they never really got to me. I mean, I should mention, I thought the scariest part of Halloween was the image of Dr. Loomis and Marion Chambers pulling up to Smith's Grove in the pitch black thunderstorm, and the patients are just roaming the yard freely. I find this image quite disturbing. And I mean, I have another one that's a little hard to explain. You know how when you lay down at night, you can like hear and feel your own pulse in your ear? Not everybody can do this, but some people can, and I can. When I was like 4 years old, I was too young to realize that what I was hearing and what I was feeling was my heartbeat. I thought there was a woman who lived underneath the floor of my bedroom, and I thought the bum, bum, bum. I thought that sound was her feet on the staircase leading up from the darkness to a trapdoor in my floor. And every night I would try as hard as I could to fall asleep before she got all the way up to the top of the staircase, opened the door, and would take me down into whatever that was down there. Now, who was this woman? I don't have the slightest idea. I don't have like a set, clear image in my head of what she even looked like, but I can tell you she was not a monster. She was just a lady. At my age now, maybe I would have stayed up and waited for her to open the door and been like, how you doing? You know what I'm saying? But seriously, I couldn't explain what this was. Who she was, where she was coming from, what was down there, what she wanted to do with me if she brought me down there. I have absolutely no idea. But all of this was very real to me. And sometimes I would kind of freak out, like wondering how I was supposed to explain this to somebody if I ever had to. And I can still kind of picture that nondescript, vague form of her right now, lifting my head off the bed and seeing her in the middle of the floor, the trapdoor open, looking at me, inviting me down. I was afraid of this scenario. So I can relate to, not only Nancy and Glenn and Tina, I can relate to Wes Craven. I saw something. I saw someone in the vulnerability of sleep. I still hear my pulse in my ears at night, and I still picture her coming up the stairs. I probably will, forever. And that's just something that I gotta deal with. If you've been around my channel for a while, if you've watched the history of Halloween, you know that I am a huge fan of that franchise. Huge Michael Myers mark, guilty as charged. But there's one thing that A Nightmare on Elm Street does that Halloween doesn't. Laurie Strode is an icon. We all know it. We all love Laurie Strode. Please leave Laurie alone now, though, forever. I'm talking to the owners of the Halloween IP here. Leave Laurie alone. Let her rest. But in looking at the first Halloween, Laurie makes it through to the end. She survives the onslaught of Michael Myers. She's smart enough to get the hell out of Dodge when the situation calls for it, and she's cunning enough to actually physically stop Michael on several occasions. What we don't get from Laurie, though, is any sort of character growth. She's a smart girl. It's arguably her brains that keep her alive throughout the night. Nancy Thompson is similar in that she is also smart. She cooks up the plan to go into the dream and pull Freddy out. She concocts the idea for Glenn to watch her while she does this, a sort of spotter in the event that things go sideways. Nancy is no dummy, but she's also not without personal growth. I mean, look at it. When the film begins, Nancy's a kid. She's a teenager in high school, right? Her priorities are her grades and her social life. Her parents are divorced. She doesn't have anyone to really lean on when times get tough because her dad's always on the job and her mom is an alcoholic mess. Nancy's independence was built out of necessity. She's contending with these barely present parents across the whole story. But by the end of the movie, heading into the final confrontation with Freddy, Nancy's taken on the role of mother in this house. She's tucking her mom into bed, quite literally, taking her bottle away and telling her that everything's gonna be alright tomorrow. We don't get anything like this from Laurie Strode, nothing even near this level of character growth, and there are several reasons as to why it works out like this. For one thing, Halloween takes place inside of just one day on the calendar. I mean, you know which one, right? There's simply not as much time to watch Laurie learn and grow throughout, So that's an easy out. And another factor is Wes Craven himself. The self-described son of a widow, Craven grew up in a very matriarchal family. His dad died when he was really, really young. Watching his mom step up and take care of business, to be his main example of what adults do and how they have to operate to get the job done, she set the tone of what a hero looked like to her son. And the funnier version of this comes into play with Wes Craven's own daughters watching his film Swamp Thing, and they were extremely annoyed that the women were falling down as they ran away from the monster. Like, Dad, this is bullshit. The girls look stupid. Craven took this advice and those pieces of his childhood to heart, and I think the lessons he learned, clearly, show themselves through Nancy Thompson. Characters, at the end of the day, are extremely important. Who knew, right? If we don't care about the people involved, why would we care about the situation that they're in? Now, A Nightmare on Elm Street is not going to retain this as time goes on, not to this level at least. We've got some garbage waiting for us down the line, don't worry. But here in the original, Nancy Thompson is an iconic horror heroine. And Freddy is an iconic horror villain. This was a match made in hell. These two were set to wage war through the ages, right? I mean, sure. In some ways. Definitely not in A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, which didn't include Nancy Thompson, Heather Langenkamp, or Wes Craven in any way whatsoever, but later on, sure, they'd all meet again. We'll start to get to the sequels next time. Today, we close with the lasting legacy of the original Nightmare. Releasing on November 9th, 1984, on a budget of just over $1 million, A Nightmare on Elm Street would go on to gross over $57 million at the worldwide box office. I don't know if you're a film insider or if you're caught up on any of the lingo, but generally, a return like this is often considered a hit. Freddy may or may not have defeated Nancy at the end of the movie, but there are two people he did defeat, and in dominant fashion. Those two people were Michael Myers and Jason Voorhees. Freddy Krueger may have been the fresh face amongst established characters, and, well, hold on, I don't know if I would call him fresh-faced. But then again, Jason was no prize. Michael Myers was burnt to a crisp, and then somehow he wound up looking fine. Look, the point is this. There was a new champion in town. This film revitalized the career of Wes Craven, taking him from respected filmmaker to immortal icon. This film gave New Line Cinema new life, re-establishing the company as the house that Freddy built. A Nightmare on Elm Street had taken the horror world by storm. And luckily for fans of Freddy Krueger, there were plenty more bad dreams where this came from. Thank you for joining me here today for the history of A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 1. I'll be back next month with more Nightmare goodness, and in between it's going to be all Mortal Kombat and this and that. Stick around. If you're new here, check out the history of Halloween, the history of Mortal Kombat, Friday the 13th, Resident Evil, God of War, UFC video games, my horror retrospective Scream sequence, Triangle X Squared Circle, the wrestling game retrospective series. Look, I do a lot around here. Your support on Patreon is what makes these videos possible, and if you want uncensored access to this and the Mortal Kombat stuff and everything else, that's where you'll get it. Thank you very much for your support. Until next time, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you soon. Panda Bear Karloff, are you afraid of Freddy Krueger?
No, Fred Krueger Jumbo.
That's the spirit.